recording started.
Now
Look at that.
need
Now
see.
we're going to see. Now you hit the button.
This is why I can't have nice things.
Because now you hit the button and now we're going and you weren't ready to go. It's okay.
Welcome to the Talking Average Fitness podcast, where we don't know what the hell we're doing. As always, I am your inept host, Mr. Samuel Burns, joined by my ever faithful and beautifully bearded Mr. Kevin McCarthy. How are you today, sir?
Equally as inept.
At least
Equally,
it's a good pairing, I guess.
yeah, equally, if not more. I wouldn't even have any idea what to do with your button configuration there. I'd be like, hey, some buttons there.
Right. So just so that nobody thinks Kevin's mind is in the gutter, at least any more than normal. The buttons we're referring to, I got a little thing on my desk that's like, hey, push this button, it does this thing. So like when we record the podcast, I push a button, it records the podcast. It's great. Well, it was not doing what I wanted to do. And so I felt stupid because I'm sitting here, pushing the button. And anyway, story of my life. We had a really, really nice little chat last time we were together. And it was all about stupid things people do. In fact, the title of the episode was Bullshit, which is live now on Spotify and Apple and YouTube. And in that vein, in the bullshit vein, but not really kind of in the bullshit vein, but a little bit in the bullshit vein.
Little bit.
A little bit. Kevin's been itching to talk about this for a while. So
I'm ready.
Here's how I would love to kick this off is consider me your cruise director, so to speak. You tell me what you want, I'm gonna put it on the screen. We're gonna point out things as we rock and roll. How's that sound?
That sounds amazing.
Beautiful.
Sounds amazing. So today, guys, we're going to talk about something that I think we as CrossFitters, or maybe not even held to CrossFitters, people within the fitness community are addicted to, and that is buying things that we think are going to make us better or fitter or more fashionable, or insert adjective here.
Yep.
I've made the joke multiple times, probably on the podcast, and I've said to Sam multiple times, where it's like, if you tell a CrossFitter that this insert objects for purchase here, if you tell CrossFitters this will make you fitter, like, done, business plan over. You don't need anything more than that, because CrossFitters will do it. If you said that pooping off a tree trunk in your backyard, it would make you Matt Fraser, guess what everybody would be doing tomorrow?
Yeah. The only way you could make more money beyond that is if you then added a leaderboard to see who spent the most money.
Who did the most amount of poops over the fallen tree? Oh man.
Yes.
That would probably be beneficial for multiple companies. Could be like fiber companies would be like, sick.
Right.
Let's get it. So today we're going to talk about accessories and shit that you can buy that is either marketed to you to make you think you need it, or for some reason you think you need it, or somewhere along the way a coach that may have been misinformed told you need it, or that it would help or something. We're going to talk about those things. So did you have a specific spot that you wanted to start, Sam, or we're just going to work our way through the whole gambit of things?
I think it's probably best to start with the most egregious, ones that people would, they could follow the logic and be like, yeah, that's probably not necessary, So what's the list of stuff that's in your head? What's the most obviously come on, guy, did you really need to buy that?
All right, here Airwave mouthpiece. I'll come right out and say it because it's the hot fucking thing now. As soon as everyone saw the little Airwave mouthpiece dangling out of the side of Rich Froning's mouth, everyone got a boner, hopped on their website, and for $20, you too can look like a dingus and put on a mouth guard to work out. Now, with that said, I think I've talked to a few people that use it, that have it, and for them, the only thing that I can wrap my head around as like, okay, it serves that purpose and maybe does it well,
Yep.
is if you have something like while they're lifting,
Yep.
like grits their teeth and they like really like clamp down or grind their teeth, then
Hmm.
like it doesn't have to be an airwave, but then like a mouth guard of some kind
Hmm.
might be useful for you to clench down on and do the thing. But the whole thing of it increases your aerobic capacity, it helps you recover like in the moment while you're doing it. Like that's just a whole bunch of bullshit and baloney and all the rest. Because okay, what's up?
So,
Peer-reviewed published research. Is there a link to the peer-reviewed published research? Because
yep.
if not, I will call bullshit.
So the following is a collection of studies related to the Airwave Performance Mouthpiece. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? So
Mm,
clinical, what is this? Clinical and experimental dental research, a publication in Modern Sports Dentistry, Cogent Medicine, Jacobs Journal of Sports Medicine, the Academy of General Dentistry, and the Journal of Strength and Conditioning Research.
okay, so
So,
of those, I heard about 4 dentists. So that would address the grinding teeth thing.
for sure.
Would be my guess. I really don't think where like I can't see, and having studied exercise science, and I'm not just pulling stuff out of my booty hole. I paid a bunch of money for a piece of paper that says I know things.
Yep.
Um, and I can't logically, and with everything that I know and have learned, wrap my head around how a $20 mouth guard that goes on your bottom set of teeth increases your ability to breathe or do better in workouts
Right.
outside of a placebo effect where you say, well, if Rich wears it and he says it makes him better, then it must ipso facto hereto therefore makes me better.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think like placebo is a powerful, we can't discount the effectiveness of placebo. Because
Oh,
placebo definitely does work for sure.
oh,
Um,
absolutely. And for anyone who
28
doesn't know,
subjects.
the placebo effect is the most documented positive effect in medical research, which is why,
1000%.
for so many things, one of the best things I ever heard was the guy who wrote Why We Sleep, Dr. Matthew Walker. He was talking about things that help you sleep. And the thing in question was melatonin, right? And he said that a lot of people take melatonin and they take it incorrectly. And so they take it thinking that it's going to help them be sleepy, but that's not really the way melatonin works in the body. But he said, however, if when you take melatonin, you believe it's working, then you should keep taking it because the placebo effect will make it so that it works.
Mm.
So as
I'm
Kevin's
just
reading
I'm just
through,
reading this.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So basically, what I'm getting from this is just the results, which is like a little for those of you guys that may not be fluent in reading scientific publications. The results is basically just like the summary. Here's what we found, and here's the major takeaways.
Yeah.
What I'm getting is basically like comparing mouthpiece use to no mouthpiece use. There's varying levels of reduction in cortisol,
Mm-hmm.
free flowing cortisol post workout, and they took measurements 10 minutes post workout.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know because it doesn't say in here whether athletes left the mouthpiece in for the 10 minutes post
Oh,
and then had their measurements taken, or if mouthpiece came out at end of workout and then they
before testing, subjects were instructed to wear the mouthpiece during routine exercise sessions before the testing days. Additionally, instructed no
wait.
caffeine, no dairy. What we're doing is we're reading through the protocol that was used to also passive drool saliva samples were collected from each of the subjects. That
Gross. Oh, I don't know how or why, but Sam went away. He must have hit one of his fancy buttons. But if we were looking at that study of what was going on, if they're saying like a passive drool sample was taken during exercise, then the only thing that in my mind could mean is they had the mouthpiece in, but they're doing like a VO2 max reading. So they have, if you've never seen or done a VO2 max test or reading, I'm incredible contraption, kind of looks like a Bane mask that goes on the front of your face, strapped around your head, that measures your CO2 that comes out as you're breathing. And based on that, a whole bunch of algorithms and calculations to figure out the volume of oxygen that your body can take in and utilize during exercise. So if you've never done one, there's a glorious little contraption at the bottom called the spit trap. Now, what that is as you're breathing out and doing a whole bunch of heavy exercise, because the tube is in your mouth, you can't close your mouth, so you're just drooling all over the place, and so it catches that. So my guess is what that little procedure that Sam was mentioning about the passive drool sample taken means that they were using a VO2 max sort of contraption on their face. It's okay. I've been keeping people entertained while you were away.
Thank God.
And so I was just talking about, because you said passive drool, like if you do a VO2 max test, you basically have a Bane mask on your face, and there's a spit trap that I'm guessing they're taking drool from that, because the only way they're measuring like oxygen and CO2 stuff with the mouthpiece, they have to use a VO2 max thingy. So I was kind of explaining that to our tens of listeners, that may or may not be interested. So that's the only way they can get the passive thing. Although there was something that, as you were kind of scrolling through, something that caught my eye really quickly. It said they used during testing a custom mouthpiece provided by a dentist. So they did not use an Airwave mouthpiece for these tests.
Oh,
I caught that. I said it was somewhere up.
Did I?
Yes.
Identical bouts.
Randomly assigned the use of a custom fit mouthpiece.
Okay. Well,
so fun
that
fact.
is interesting.
Debunked.
Procedures.
Boom.
Well, so for the customized mouthpiece by a sports dentist, Under Armour Performance Mouthwear, Baltimore, Maryland. Mouthpiece was non-invasive and fits snugly on individuals' lower set of teeth. Mouthpieces arrived, individuals placed them in their mouth, and all fit with ease and comfortable. No level. Okay, cool. Okay.
So not like a make or break deal, but when it comes to scientific studies and like finding like the validity of things, like details matter. And so the fact that Airwave is posting research on a device that's not an Airwave mouthpiece is interesting to me. I get what they're saying. It's still a lower jaw mouthpiece that is being used during this study. But one thing you will note is that the claims made during this particular study, now we haven't read all of them, and we probably won't read all of them, because that would be an entire podcast in itself.
For real.
But in the summary portion, it said the main takeaway was immediately post-exercise and then 10 minutes post-exercise. Basically what they were finding is lower levels of free-flowing cortisol with the group that used the mouthpiece. Now, what that could mean is you're going to recover a bit quicker. You're going to go more from your fight or flight into rest and digest quicker, easier, a combination of the both. If you wear the mouthpiece is the major finding with this. Yeah. What the mechanism is to get there. Yeah. I don't know. We would have to read through the entire study and break things down bit by bit, but it's claiming that essentially your recovery will be heightened because you get less cortisol. Yeah. I'm wondering if you would get a same effect doing a cool down. Right. Just hop on a bike for 10 minutes at super submaximal pace and heart rate, and you just let everything, you help everything come back down to earth, as opposed to, I finished in 2:30, I'm just going to hop in my car. Right. I'm wondering if a cool down would have a similar effect. So that's why whenever you're thinking scientific stuff, what are the findings and then compared to what? Yeah. So I'd be very interested if Airwave, someone did a study comparing a mouthpiece to just a normal cool down. Yeah. And see what they did. Because I would argue, and again, with my knowledge of physiology, that if they were wearing their mouthpiece for 10 minutes to help accelerate recovery versus someone who did a 10-minute cool down to accelerate recovery, I feel like they'd be at a non-statistically relevant baseline come the end of those 10 minutes. It would be my argument. So
what I think is interesting as a big takeaway here is there was no aerobic work performed.
What were they doing?
Here. So
it'd help if I could read.
Yeah. So it was a 10-minute warm-up, and this is what I was reading when I glitched on the internet. So 10-minute warm-up, of wood chops, reverse lunge and twist, chest press with a medicine ball, line hops, push ups, and straight leg deadlifts, right? And then everything after that was entirely resistance training. So, or body weight training. So 3x3 hang cleans, and then 3x3 at 70 to 75%, 90 seconds rest. Narrow grip deadlifts, which I don't understand. Like, does that mean not a snatch grip? What the fuck is a narrow grip deadlift?
The world may never know.
I don't know.
It's like how many licks does it take to get to the center of a Tootsie Pop?
Right. So 3x5 at 70%, shoulder mobility exercises, 3x5 single leg overhead shoulder press.
At the maximum weight possible. I love that.
Single leg overhead shoulder press?
Next level variance here. If we're talking like you want to get fit, 1 rep max, single leg overhead press.
I mean, apparently, crossover double unders weren't enough. So this is where we're headed. And final 10 minutes of the workout session consisted of core exercises aimed at strengthening abdominal, oblique, and lumbar musculature. Okay, that's fantastic. And it sounds like a nice little training sesh.
I want to know how they knew what 70 to 75% of their narrow grip stiff-legged deadlift was.
Right? Jesus.
Next max out day. Narrow grip stiff-legged deadlift.
And I look at stuff like this and I'm like, okay, the people who wrote this, do you train? Or did you just Google a bunch of things?
That one.
Yeah. That other one.
Because the thing is, if you're a strength and conditioning coach or you work in, if you're a CrossFit coach, whatever, you probably, I'm not going to say you don't, most likely you don't have access to a lab with which to test this shit. So like protocols, if someone's going to come out from like a top lab, then they probably will have physiologists running it.
Yeah.
I know that my professor in college, Justin Karlstrom, he was the physio for the U.S. Olympic ski team for years. So they would play with all their athletes in the lab and have fun with stuff. And but he was a PhD physio doing the thing. So he knows the deal. But if you're trying to test something, or if you have a company, so it was an Under Armour mouthpiece. So my guess is Under Armour paid Harvard lab to run this test. You pay them, run this test this shit, whatever. And so now you have your lab people who may or may not have ever worked out a day in their life go like, okay, we have to now test an exercise thing. Do you know what exercise is? Do you know? No? Okay, cool. Use the Google machine. And that's not to be mean to people in the scientific community because they are amazing human beings. However, you don't know what you don't know, but you have to do the best you can when the fat paycheck comes in and says, test this.
Yeah.
So fun stuff. So Airwave mouthpiece, my first gripe. Don't need it. But I know that Sam uses one.
I do. Right? And so hence my
what's the value that you find in it? Like what do you find it does for you? Like I know this isn't a study, but like anecdote is worth something. What's your experience with an Airwave?
So hence my subtitle of I bought it first. Most of the stuff we're going to talk about, I own.
100%. We've been there.
Yeah, absolutely. My experience with it is, I would say I've used it often enough now that when I don't have it, I notice that I have to, like, the nice thing about it is I can just relax my jaw, or like, I can choose to breathe nasally, or I can just breathe, and there's always some kind of open channel in my mouth. I don't know that like I've ever had an issue clenching teeth. I'm a little bit more of a Sarah Sigmundsdottir. I'm an open mouth lifter rather than a closed mouth lifter. And so from like a teeth clenching perspective, there's never been anything, but I do know that having like, especially like I'm thinking like intervals on the Echo Bike or something like that, having, it's almost like a fidget toy, but in my mouth.
Yeah. It's like something for you to focus on.
Yes. Yeah. And that is tangible. Like not having that to focus on, and I just have to be with myself, there's a difference. If I can focus on being like, okay, I'm going to bite this thing. When I bite it, I can feel my jaw lever, and I can feel my airway open up. And so I will like make it a part of the process of working through it, where it's like bite, count breaths, establish a like a pace
Rhythm,
and
yeah.
then exactly and keep it going. That's my
Cool.
experience with it.
And I think that is incredibly valuable. If you so again, a little disclaimer for everything we're going to say here.
Yes.
Sam, like if anything that we're going to make fun of and poke fun of and say you don't need, me and Sam have, or have used in the past,
Absolutely.
and that's why we can speak on it because we've used it, we've been there.
Except P-Volve.
Well, that's true. Yet.
Yet.
And so like we've used it, we've done it, we have it in the gym bag. It's not to say that all these things are completely useless. Like Sam said, if he buys an Airwave and he finds value in the sense that like while he's absolutely crushing himself and dying a little bit on the Echo bike, biting down on his Airwave gives him something to focus on and hone in on, aside from I want someone to chop my legs off, then that's valuable. And that's going to allow Sam to be better. So like, I'm not saying that like no one can ever use or find value in an Airwave.
Absolutely.
It's just not necessary to do the thing.
Yeah.
Like if Sam were to do intervals on an Echo bike without his Airwave, he would be fine. He would get fitter. Life would move on.
Absolutely.
And we'd be all good in the hood. So that's first one.
Right. What's
second
next?
one? What do you got? I just put my biggest one. What's your biggest one? Hit me. Man,
okay, so let me pull it up here.
I feel like I know what it might be. But
I love maybe.
I might.
Here we go. I'm gonna poke this on over here. Present. And boom.
Oh yeah. Yep.
And this is coming from a guy who, like, when I squat heavy, I wear knee sleeves. And I'm very conscious of knee health. I'm very conscious of like knees over toe protocol. Like, no joke, rebuilt my knee after my patellar tendinopathy. But are they necessary? 100% not. And now it doesn't mean that they don't feel good. And especially people with like pre-existing knee issues, and like, you feel better when joints feel warmer, right?
Yep.
And I think the thing with knee sleeves is it's like warming up with a hoodie on. You get warmer quicker, you know, and you don't cool down. And like with a joint like your knee, and a lot of times I think what happens with knees, hips, backs, shoulders is people get pain averse. And because they're so, and I've experienced this as well, that they're so conscious and mindful of trying to avoid the thing that causes pain, that it alters how they do the movement. And then they end up in a non-optimal movement position, and then it ends up compromising that joint further maybe. Whereas psychologically, if my knees feel warm, I feel confident. If I feel confident, I'm going to keep a better position. I'm not going to move and like fucking contort my body in some weird way to avoid a pain that might not come. And also in the wintertime, or like lunges, like anytime.
Oh, necessary for lunges. If you're doing
Also
like
burpees.
walking, okay, I could see that. For walk, if you're doing lunges, walking lunges, anything, I just use my kneecap as a spring. So, not really, but it gives like that little extra bit of padding as your knee touches the floor.
Absolutely.
So it's not just like kneecap to floor. But I 100% get, if you live anywhere, you know, we live in the Northeast. It's cold as hell for a while. Knee sleeves are something, especially if I'm going for me, is like if I was going for like a heavy squat or heavy clean. And it's, you know, in the winter especially, but also like year round, if I'm going for like a heavy something, like you said, having that on there, knowing the joints are warm, like the knee sleeve is not going to fully protect you. It's not going to fix your shitty movement. But if having those on there gives you the confidence to hit your movements well, then I think that, you know, same bucket. I know where you're going. So this was my two choices. I was when you said I have my first one, I was in my head between knee sleeves and wrist straps. But the knee sleeves for me for like the heavy clean, heavy back squat would give me that confidence. Like, yep, I can hit this and like feel good about it. But also, especially during the winter where it's like, okay, it's -10 degrees. So inside the walls of the gym, it's like maybe 37.
Yeah.
And you're and you're doing some lifting, like having your knees be warm will give you that confidence to, okay, I'm not gonna literally shoot my kneecaps into the wall in front of me while I do this front squat.
Absolutely.
It makes you feel better,
Yeah.
but not necessary for doing the thing.
Yeah.
By any means. So
and wrist wraps go right along with that. Like I will
Yep.
put on wraps if I'm max load overhead. I will put on wrist wraps. So like heavy clean and jerks, heavy strict press. I think, and this is, I think you touched on it really well when you said it's not a substitute for better movement. Like,
Nope.
if I'm using the wrist wrap, but not paying attention, so like bench press is a great example, right? So here's my hand. One of the best ways I ever heard it described is same thing with the overhead squat. If you look at your hand kind of like a J hook, right? So
Yep.
here at the side, I make this, I've got my wrist bone directly over my elbow. I set the bar in the middle. It's going to run this way along my hand, along the meat of my palm. So there's the maximum square footage possible of my hand touching it. And then I'm going to close my hand. When I close my hand, if I hold it from the side here, what you see is my wrist stacked, like the center of my palm stacked over my wrist, stacked over my elbow. I am not letting this happen, where I am letting the wrist crank back behind me. It's the same thing on a bench press, same thing on an overhead squat. And so if you're going into an overhead squat or a bench press or like a strict press, and you're hoping that this is going to prevent this from being painful, that's not the way things work. It might help a little bit because it physically inhibits the distance that joint can travel, but it doesn't change the fact that like lifting with your wrist broken like this is like squatting with your knees driving in. Don't do it. And to coaches out there, like, don't just recommend that people go and buy wrist wraps. Like, fix their wrist position, get sideways, look at them from the side. Yeah, sure, make sure the bar is centered about the midfoot and all that stuff, but also like look at their fucking wrist. If their wrist is cranked back and they're complaining about the fact that it hurts, fix it.
Yep.
Whack
And I mean, that's one thing that, with in regards to wrist wraps is when people are first starting CrossFit and they've never done any sort of fitness or training, and they start to get a bar overhead or they're pressing with a bar or anything like that might put their wrist into that flexed position. I don't know why you need wrist wraps for a safety bar squat. I don't know what Rogue is doing here. That's incredible.
That's a really great question.
They're not even tight right now. You can tell the way it's wrapped. Fantastic. Anyways,
although this is a good indication of how it should be used. So like what we're looking at here is there's an athlete who is doing a bench press.
They have multiple colored plates on there, so that looks heavy.
Absolutely. So they've got the wrap up around the wrist joint, right? So it's not down on the lower forearm.
It's not like it's not on their forearm below their wrist joint. It's like actually up around their wrist.
Yes. And so the only way that'll work is if you don't let your wrist bend, right? So this guy has this bar stacked about the middle of his palm, which is stacked directly over his wrist, which is stacked directly over his elbow. That is a functional use for the wrist wrap. And when you've got power lifters benching 300, 400 pounds, that's a legitimate use for that device.
But the thing that I think is detrimental is then, so you have a new member come into your gym, they've never done CrossFit, they start to now handle a barbell overhead, doing bench presses, whatever, and they hold the bar more towards the joint of their fingers. And so their wrist cranks back this way, and they're like, ow, my wrist hurts. And this isn't like intentional sabotage on some people's parts, but new member says, ow, my wrist hurts. And Sam, being the good Samaritan that he is, goes, you know what helped me when my wrist hurts? Wrist wraps. So now new member goes, that's what I need, wrist wraps. So they go on to Rogue, they order a pair of wrist straps that match their best friends or is their favorite color. And now they have wrist straps. And then every time we're doing thrusters at 75 pounds, everybody's got wrist straps on.
Already.
I'm like, guys, it's not a heavy barbell.
Yeah.
You don't need let your wrists get stronger. Obviously, in a advantageous position would be best.
Yeah.
But if new person coming into CrossFit has been doing CrossFit for less than a month and they just start slapping wrist straps on everything, guess what's never going to get stronger?
Yeah.
And then when they go to work out and they don't have their wrist straps, they're like, I can't do it because my wrists are very weak.
Right.
So same thing could be said for like knee sleeves. Like, oh, hey, like my knees are bugging me a little bit. And they're like, oh, like I just get some knee sleeves. You'll be good. And it's not ill-intentioned by because usually those suggestions come from members, like their friends in the gym.
And we're trying to help each other out.
Yep. It's with the best of intentions. You're trying to help your buddy do the thing by saying, get some wrist straps and some knee sleeves. And this is where the CrossFit gear addiction comes from.
Yep.
And starts.
All right. So what's next on your list?
We got lifters. Lifters. I said what I said.
Okay.
Come at
Do you
me
mean a lifter? So which is your, of all of these, they got the Legacy Lifter 3 now? Jesus. I'm old.
Yeah, well, so out of all these, which one's the worst? All of them. Listen, here's why. And here's my thing. Again, not that lifters are not useful.
Yep.
I competed in Olympic weightlifting for 2 years.
There you go.
And not without minor success in the 2 or 3 meets I did. I came in third each one. I was 2 kilos shy of qualifying for nationals on my last one.
Oh, damn.
And it was that failure that then pushed me to CrossFit, because I was feeling dejected from losing or not getting qualifying for nationals.
Right.
And all my friends were at our off-campus house doing muscle ups and running around and doing stuff. And I was like, well, that's fun over there. So I'm gonna go have fun with my friends instead of lifting by myself.
Right.
So anyways, I used Olympic weightlifting shoes exclusively for 2 years. Couldn't catch me in a pair of Nanos. Lifters only. And here's what happened. As I was using lifters, you can start to use them as a crutch for your shitty movement patterns. I was not a great squatter.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So I was not a great squatter. My movement patterns were okay at best. I didn't pay much attention to mobility because I was young enough that I could get away with just beating my body into a pulp and be fine. So using lifting shoes, what then happened is as soon as I then transitioned into more CrossFit stuff, take the lifters away, I'm now on my toes. You could fit an entire stack of printer paper beneath my heels because I was so used to, I've built a movement pattern in this way.
Yeah.
Now, there are competitive Olympic weightlifters that they take care of the mobility, they take care of their bodies, they manage the whole thing. They might warm up in flat shoes and do their working sets in lifters. They are flat, they're stable, they're heavy. You will feel like you are rooted to the fucking floor and the most stable you've ever been. They are phenomenal at that. But if we are just talking about getting fit, being healthy, and like having a good workout in the gym, you do not need Olympic weightlifting shoes. Your life would probably benefit more from you learning to squat better than chuck on a pair of lifters so that your heels lift up so you can drive your knees further forward and keep your chest up.
Ooh, yeah.
So that's just my thought on them. They're not necessary by any means. Are they useful? Absolutely. Are they necessary? Absolutely not. Because I have this weird flex.
What?
But is it like the little pump thing? So it makes it tight around the top of your foot. Wow.
Bringing it back.
But are they necessary? Absolutely not. This is kind of a weird flex, but I'm gonna chuck it out there. I have PR'd my snatch before in a pair of flip-flops.
There you go.
So,
well, and I don't think that's a flex. I think that's important to like in a pair of flip flops, you were probably like, I'm gonna fucking haul on this bar.
Yeah, well, it was also like I had worked on my squat to the point where like
Yeah.
I was now a good squatter and I could
Right.
squat well and like I could keep my heels down and everything's, working well. But 100% I'm like I'm going to like put everything into my pull,
Yeah.
and rather than like coming up on my toes at the top of my pull,
Yeah.
I'm going to like push my, hips up and shoulders to where
Right.
like just more aggressive extension but kind of heels more down.
Yeah.
So that and again, like it's again, it's not like a shitload of weight that I was doing. There are obviously people that can snatch more, but like it was a 235 snatch and flip flops.
Yeah. But I mean, it's
So
never, nothing you wear
no,
will ever outdo you trying harder.
nope,
And like,
not a thing.
it doesn't matter if it's an airwave. Like, airwaves are great if you can, while you wear the airwave, tell yourself, I'm not going to stop.
Yep.
You know,
If you just chuck that in there thinking it's going to make you Superman,
absolutely.
and then it ain't happening for you.
Do
Okay,
you
your
have
next one.
Oh, is my next one?
Yeah, we're gonna go back and forth here, working our
Okay.
way down the list of stuff.
If
Anything can count as an accessory. Anything that someone can buy that is going to make them think they're getting better. It doesn't have to be like a clothing, something you put on your body related thing.
So when I start to get into stuff like this, it's like, what's the weird stuff? Core instability.
The ab mat with the butt crack.
Yeah, like the ab wheel. A Bosu ball is a classic example. Also, they have what, $200 for a Bosu ball? God damn.
Is that the half one too? Like it's the one with the flat platform, the black one.
Yeah, they're all same thing.
Wow.
Yeah. What the hell is this? The Stroops Tomahawk sack?
Oh, I know what you're doing with that. I know what you're doing. You're holding onto the rope and you're doing one of these.
Oh, you like you're a
for
Viking.
For those of you that don't have the pleasure of viewing, I was doing this.
Yes. If you can't see, this is what I was doing.
This is what I was doing. Basically, it's a weighted ball, not a medicine ball, like a D ball, like a 10-pound D ball that's basically attached to the end of the rope, and you swing it around like a lasso type thing with double arms, I would imagine. But it's basically what is that?
So I have no idea.
That looks like the thing you used to that like the old fashioned like paint the lines on the field deal. That's what that looks like.
It is.
You know what I'm talking about though? The lawnmower that was the paint sprayer.
So how does this work? Is it a stationary?
What even is it?
I think it's a resistance, redefining acceleration training for the modern athlete, natural resistance training for users of any size, is a precision built to mimic the genuine experience of free running. Oh, so it's a flywheel. It's a weighted flywheel for running. So you get yourself in a harness and then you run.
And you take off on that thing.
Yes.
It's a more expensive version of the parachute.
Yes, it is.
Okay. Okay.
I think
I could see that. It's weird, but I could see that having like a really specific application for like track athletes.
Here's the thing. It like talk about a niche piece of equipment. I would like to think that almost any part of this $1,599 piece of equipment could be accomplished with a piece of rope and or a tire.
Yeah.
And like, don't get me wrong. So. Like, this is obviously a well-engineered piece of equipment. Like, somebody put a lot of effort into this and like fantastic marketing.
Yeah.
And,
for those of you guys that aren't watching, this is a torque tank.
Yes. Yeah. Torque tank. Sorry.
It's okay.
But they also sleds. So they have a bunch of these. Where are these? So
that flywheel thing that we watched or saw that like I could see again, funky, not necessary by any means because we're talking general fitness, but that could be a really like unique and fun piece of equipment if you're like working with high level track athletes or something like a running back or something where like just explosive speed off of a start
Yeah.
had to be worked on, like to add resistance to that. That could be a really funky, again, super niche, not necessary by any means, unless you're trying to break Usain Bolt's record
Right.
on the 100-meter sprint. You don't. I mean, Usain Bolt set the record without the use of said weighted flywheel thingy.
Right.
So he was running. I don't know if you've ever. They did a documentary on Usain Bolt. I don't know if you've ever seen it, where like you're watching him. It was like before his the 2012 Olympics, I think.
Probably. Yeah.
So it's like documentary, like, you know, over the couple years of training before that. And he's literally with his track coach on it, like the shittiest soccer field you can imagine in Jamaica, like lumpy, muddy, whatever. And he's literally just got a pair of cleats on.
Yeah.
Like not his track spikes, because you can't on that surface. Like it's made just for a track.
Yeah.
And they're just running like the length of the field, and all he's doing is he's got a harness on him, and he's dragging. I don't even know if you could call it a sled. He's dragging, like they basically just looped a rope through like a weight plate, and he's just dragging this thing just back and forth. If it's a proper soccer field, it's 120 yards long, meters. So he's just doing 120 meter just back, or it might have been less than that, but he's basically going back and forth across the field.
Wow.
Just dragging like a 25-pound plate that's attached to a rope and tied to his underpants. And he's just off he go. And that's the fastest human to ever do it. So you don't need a lot to make it happen. But that could be a funky piece of equipment if you're, you know, it's basically that's the Ivan Drago to Usain Bolt's dragging a plate around a soccer field. That's the Ivan Drago version, is the flywheel. If you don't know who Ivan Drago is, start with Rocky 1, work your way forward.
Just in case you didn't know. Hang on, group accessory kit. So there's a whole bunch of accessories for this Torque Tank.
What is that? Oh, it's Torque Tank. Okay.
Yeah, this is all Torque Tank stuff. So this Torque Tank, they have a Torque Fitness Tank MX. It's $2,499.
Oh.
Like, obviously, this is a well-engineered piece of something or other. Like the legs, the arms come out and they fold in, and like, and then there's this dude
you can
who's
push
like,
two of them.
I guess.
You can push two of them for some reason.
I didn't think that would be important, but apparently it's important. And then, you know, now you're pulling it, and so like all of like, also the rope for this is $119. Like,
must be
what the fuck?
Great fucking rope.
Yeah, right. That rope better cure cancer.
It might.
Yeah, who knows? So
have they tested it?
This is you don't know that it doesn't.
Exactly.
Here we get into, like, again, talk about super niche things. For someone, like, I know a dude who owns one of these things, and he trains regularly. He used it to rehab his knees, and like he does real well for himself. So it's not a big deal for him to spend $1,500 or $2,500 on a niche piece of equipment. Now, there might be some people in my own personal orbit who, financially speaking, for them, $1,500 to $2,500 is not a lot of money. And so they look at something like this and they're like, yeah, I'll use this once a month. That'll be good. And then they just buy it. Okay, cool. I would never look at you and be like, that's a bad move. Don't be that guy.
Yeah.
What I would say is, if you came to me and you were one of my athletes or one of my clients, and you said, hey, I saw this thing. Is it going to help me get to X, Y, or Z? Unless you're trying to be the 1% of X, Y, or Z, whatever it ends up being, it's probably not going to get you there as efficiently as other things that are more under our control. Like, are you training consistently? Are you eating right for the volume of your training that you're doing, A, and then for your output or your goal, B? Are you sleeping appropriately? Right? Like, are you trying to bite off too much in your training sessions? Or, you know, are you not doing enough? And so that's why you're not seeing the gains that you want to. How long have you been training for? You're 3 weeks into a 12-week cycle and you're bored already. And so you're wondering, you got like shiny object syndrome, and you want to buy a thing and hope it's going to solve your problem. You know, unfortunately, I don't think that's going to get us there. Now,
no.
Would I like to play with this thing? Absolutely.
Oh, it would be I could see this being absolutely disgusting because you can increase resistance settings on the wheels to basically make it so you're pushing that bitch in mud.
Yeah.
Um, and so that's what they should call the levels. Next level marketing, here's where my head goes. You're like, all right, you're pushing it on pavement, you're pushing it on sand, you're pushing it on mud, you're pushing it on quicksand.
Quicksand. Yeah.
Yeah. So you put it to the quicksand setting, do an assault bike sprint, then push that bitch 50 feet.
Blech.
Repeat until you feel like you've gotten your money's worth.
All right. All right. So I feel like we've got something good here, right?
Okay.
I want to flip the script. We're at the tail end of the podcast here. I want to flip the script.
Yep.
What is something that is 100% unnecessary that you absolutely love?
Ooh.
Because I know
100% unnecessary. Ooh. 100% unnecessary that I absolutely love.
Yeah.
When we say unnecessary, like you don't need it at all, or it's just a version of something that's like
either
you could have gotten it for way cheaper.
Either
but
or.
You have a special one. Oh. Fudge.
Because I know mine.
I need to think. You go.
Okay.
I need to think about my useless thing.
This. Okay. So my wife got me this for Christmas. Right?
Oh, I know what that is.
So for people who can't see, this is a whiteboard that clips onto a Rogue upright. So I've got an Infinity yoke from Kev O'Donnell from Reebok. I bought it off him. It sits in my garage, and that's my squat stand. And I was like, I have a whiteboard, but this is nice because it's right there, and it's totally fucking superfluous. Like, this is an unnecessary thing.
Yeah.
But my wife wanted to get it for me, right? And so she's like, would you use this? I said, of course I would use this, honey.
Of course. Yeah.
I got it. I'm looking at this thing. I'm like, this is nice little whiteboard, plastic, and it clips right on. No, this thing is cast iron. It is made of the same material as the squat stand. Yes.
Yeah.
And when I got it, I was like, oh, this is so much cooler automatically because it's made out of cast
metal.
Literally, it's so metal. And so it's so satisfying to just be like, clank, chunk, and then to write on that bitch.
Yeah.
100% not necessary. And I've got a whiteboard that just hangs out on the floor, and I'll use that. But I make sure to use this because it's that satisfying.
So quick little story for the office in CrossFit Boston. I don't know if they still have it. It may have. So Lachlan got one of the big ones. So like it spanned the whole desk.
Oh wow.
And he basically put like a piece of rig on rolly wheels, a rig upright, and then bolted a big one of that to it and like made a standing desk. So when I say it was big, I mean it was probably 5 or 6 feet wide.
Wow.
And then like 3 to 3.5 feet like tall.
Yeah.
So it was a big. I don't know if he got it from Rogue, but it was like that. It was metal. The thing was heavy, and he basically made a rolling standing desk off of rig uprights that he bolted to like rolling wheels, basically like it was a portable rig thing.
Right.
The rig uprights, then he put on the rig upright, like bolted the whiteboard to it, so it gave it some structure because it was bolt top and bottom.
Right.
And then he put the spotter arms on a rig. So spotter arms, and then bolted to that a piece of hardwood to make the desk.
Oh.
So Lachlan built one of those. It was the most incredible thing, little standing desk and a thing, and the whiteboard was like, it's pristine. It was, you get some crisp chisel edge expo markers on that thing. So it's the little things. When you're coaching fitness, it's the little things. Eating a new vacuum was the best day in the entire world.
Oh, right. New package of expo markers.
Yeah. Oh, the best.
And you take all of the blacks and like you hoard them.
So we do. That's what we do here because we had when I first started here at Tilt, we had black markers that we just put them on the whiteboard, like the little cup thingy for the little bottom rail. They were up there with all the markers, and the thing is people either didn't click the marker all the way shut, sent me, or it's left on the floor. I find it 3 classes later with the cap off.
Yeah.
Like just on the floor by a mini whiteboard. And so we made a thing. We're like, okay, the colored markers, you guys can just fuck them up straight to hell. There you go. But the black marker, so me and Colin have one, like there's a pack of them in the office no one can use, but we have one black marker that in the morning, I take it from the desk, I put it in my pocket. No one touches it but me. When Colin comes in, I hand him the talking stick. And then he now has the black marker and he can go on, go forth and be awesome. And then it goes in his pocket. No one touches it because I don't trust people with my black markers.
Hilarious.
Anyways, so I found what my useless thing is. That's completely not necessary by any means. It's the blue mobility wad ball.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So because I'm me, and I may have done this on mistake. I may have done it on purpose. It was so long ago, I don't remember. But I got both sizes. One of them is like a lacrosse ball, and then one of them is like a softball or like a grapefruit. That thing. So I have 2 of those, one small, one big. Yep. They are my blue balls. And so they're not necessary by any means. They do the same exact thing as a foam roller or a lacrosse ball would do. The argument for this and the design of it and like all the little ridges everywhere is that when you sit your muscle on it and you move it, it like helps to pull apart layers of fascia. Does it do that? I have no idea. It's probably about as likely to do that as an airwave is to increase your aerobic capacity.
Yeah.
But at the time, I was like, ooh, this is fun. And K-Star was running the show of anything to do with mobility. ROMWOD didn't exist yet. No. But the mobility WOD was the thing.
Yep.
And I was like, this guy's smart. I'm going to buy his shit. So I bought his book and the 2 blue balls and started rocking and rolling with it. I still have them. I use them, but it's like I could get the same thing with the biggest thing is like they're portable. So like I'll put them in my backpack. If we're traveling for a while, I'll take the small one, chuck it in the backpack so that because then I can do some mobility stuff. If things are feeling tight, you sit on a plane for 6 hours, you're like, I'm going to shove this thing in my butt.
Absolutely.
But you can do the same thing with a foam roller or a normal lacrosse ball, and that it's absolutely fine. So that would be my thing that's not useless, but I have.
Yeah. Well, this is, as always, this is a lot of fun. Unfortunately, I have run out of time. I got to go to another meeting.
Gotcha.
But for those of you who have been playing along at home, you probably don't need knee sleeves or lifters, though we absolutely understand why you might want them.
Or a belt. Be
your own belt.
Be your own belt. Learn to brace.
That's still important. If you're not bracing, then the belt isn't doing anything. That's really important.
It's not doing anything anyways if you haven't braced.
Let's talk about that next time.
Okay, great.
As always, thank you for playing along. Kevin, it's always a pleasure seeing you face, my friend.
Always.
All right. Go forth. Be well.